Governor Dukakis, Mrs. Dukakis, to our good friend Liz, and to President Lee, ladies and gentlemen, I hasten to bring greetings to you on behalf of our Secretary, the Honorable Ken Salazar, and the men and women of the Department of Interior, and particularly the men and women of the National Park Service. I'm very pleased to be accompanied by four of the Park Service finalists, and I would ask you to join me in welcoming the newly appointed superintendent of the Boston National Historical Park, who is accompanied by three members of his staff, Mr. Cassius Cash. Cash? I want to tell you how delighted I am to be with you this afternoon. To receive a call from Governor Dukakis is a privilege and a pleasure within itself, and he does not accept no. So I adjusted my calendar, whatever it may be, to be here. Governor, thank you again for this great honor, and certainly to be associated with three outstanding panelists who are in the vineyard daily, forging new relationships in support of our rich and diverse local, state, and national parks. It's an honor to be here. To talk about national parks and talk about some of the challenges and talk about their relationship to municipal, state, and regional parks, to do it in a short span of time is difficult, but we will do our best. The governor mentioned at the outset that I started in the Kennedy administration, and I could just see a number of you say that I do not have enough fingers, I do not have enough toes to count how long this fellow has been involved in parks. They tell me that a friend is one with whom you can think aloud. So put your mind at ease. Yes, I'm old. I am old. I know that's what you've been thinking. But it was a privilege to be a part of the Kennedy administration and to be bitten by the conservation of the park bug and to been with the National Park Service some 35 years as a career employee, and then 4 years roughly as a director under the Clinton administration. My comments perhaps will take on just a wee bit of a different focus, but hopefully they will embrace the excellent comments and assessments that have been given to us by our previous three speakers. But I tell you, I will not be outdone with video presentation. Thanks to the courtesy of the Northeast region of the National Park Service, of which the state of Massachusetts is one, there will be some presentation during the reception that will depict the rich parks within this great region. I might add that it certainly will prominently display the 14 parks in the great Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and we're very pleased with that, including the stretch of the Appalachian Trail. Since I'm in the Northeast, it extends from Maine to Georgia. If I were in Georgia, it would extend from Georgia to Maine, but you know, you have to be adjustable. Let me just sketch for you very, very briefly the scope of the responsibilities of your National Park Service and the areas for which it's responsible, as well as some other programs. And then try to deduce from that what some of our experiences have been relative to partnerships, revenue generation, and what I would see as being the philosophical as well as the practical framework that has sustained us in some difficult times, have not given us all the resources to reach the level of park management operation, but they have been the anchor in terms of how the Park Service has proceeded over the years. Your National Park Service will be 100 years old in 2016, so plans are on the way to celebrate the centennial of the National Park Service. And I know that many of you are counting up, well, wasn't Yellowstone established in 1872 that make the Park Service older? No. There were roughly 33 areas that had been authorized by Congress prior to the Park Service being established on August 25, 1916. And most of those areas, ladies and gentlemen, were taken care of by our military, the U.S. Cavalry. As a matter of fact, it was the Buffalo Soldiers that protected Yosemite and Sequoia before there was a National Park Service. The National Park Service today administers 392 areas, extending from American Samoa to Maine, from Alaska to the U.S. Virgin Islands. Contrary to the most common perception that the national park system is comprised of the large, grandeur natural areas such as Yellowstone, Everglades, or Cape Cod. Roughly 3/4 of the areas within the national park system says something about us as a people and something about us as a nation. It reflects our growth, our maturing as a nation. So your national parks not only preserve the rich, natural, scenic wonders, the biotic communities, but also say that as a people, as a nation, we have grown from the Revolutionary War up to where we are today. Within the context of managing those parks, as with all federal agencies, large or small, we rely on congressional appropriations. The appropriation process is on an annual basis. The Secretary, along with his bureau heads, has to go before the U.S. Congress to argue for a budget to operate the succeeding year. And sometimes the testimony and the exchange, as Governor Dukakis can attest to, sometimes get heated. But there, I think, is a general sentiment on the part of the members of Congress. They recognize the importance of national parks, and I'll touch upon that a little bit later. But what has happened over the past few years, recognizing that the appropriations, obviously, as has been witnessed by representatives from the state and the cities, are not commensurate with the most critical needs. Congress, to their credit, has given your National Park Service additional authorities, most over the past decades. As an example, many of you go to parks and you pay an entrance fee, or you pay a camping fee, or some type of other specialized fee because of the privilege of doing a certain activity. Up until the mid-90s, those fees were collected and deposited in a dedicated account in the U.S. Treasury to be used for a sundry of purposes. Congress passed legislation saying that every penny of fees collected in the national parks will be retained by the National Park Service. That today generates something in the neighborhood of $170 million in addition to our appropriation. When I was the director, there was another major authority approved by Congress. We have, I still say we, I'm no longer with the Park Service, but what the heck, I can claim it as well. 350 concessionaires operating small businesses to large businesses. They must pay a franchise fee for the privilege of operating a commercial enterprise in a park, notwithstanding it's providing vital services to the public. Today, the National Park Service collect from franchise fees in the neighborhood of $70 million, all dedicated, every penny, to the National Park Service. For many years, we were permitting Hollywood, if you will, to produce films with scenes of great parks as a backdrop without any kind of fee attached to that, other than they would certainly credit that particular film being produced in a given park. But today, on a commercial evaluated basis, anyone producing a commercial film within a park and utilizing that to promote their film pays a franchise fee. All of those fees are retained by your National Park Service. But let me mention, and I will sort of move quite rapidly, let me mention that while the appropriation, as with the state and the municipal park system, are appropriated and they are public funds, they represent a public trust, is that there are certain prerequisites that must be adhered to if in fact you're going to be able to consistently demonstrate that you're making effective and efficient use of resources, whether they're appropriated or whether they are donated. And I would just like to suggest that we keep in mind that every park, in my judgment, and certainly this is by law a requirement for your national parks, that you should have a viable management plan that will specifically outline What is the purpose of this park? What is its significance? What are the goals you're trying to obtain? And what are the publics that you're attempting to serve? What are the kinds of services you'll be providing? But continued to that is to assure that as you're managing that park, that you can demonstrate that the users of that park will be safe, there won't be glass or broken sidewalks, and you will also assure that the resources entrusted to you will be protected and preserved, whether they're cultural or whether they're natural. And that your programs, hear me well on this one, that your programs are responsive to and are reflected of the publics you are serving. I served for 8 years in the National Capital Region of the National Park Service that include all the parks in DC, some in Virginia, Maryland, West Virginia. The challenge facing the regional director of that region now is different from those that I face. The resources of the chain are the same, but the public for which she is responsible of servicing are dynamic. Witness Boston as an example. I suspect that the 2000 census of the demographics of this fine city are vastly different from what they were 10 years ago. As I understand the 2000 census, roughly 40 to 48% of the population of roughly 600,000 in Boston represent racial and ethnic minorities. A donor, a prospective donor, is going to raise a question, as they do with the Park Service: are your programs, are your users reflective of what you're doing as a park manager? Many of the conservation organizations go to large foundations and to corporate community. They raise the question: are you being responsive to America, all America? And ladies and gentlemen, this is an insight that I have personally experienced, and I just want to share that with you. You got to be able to demonstrate that you are serving all the publics, all segments of the public. Therefore, you will get better response from prospective donors. The other thing I may mention with respect to parks, may they be natural or cultural, as Peg and Meg and others have mentioned, with today's communications technology, the words is out so fast. There's a whole phenomena of whether or not we are relevant to today's generation. And I don't think there's a solution to that. But we have the responsibility as the stewards of these parks and these cultural resources to be able to convey the importance of their preservation and the benefits that can be derived from their use by young people, senior citizens alike. There's no way that we can assure the survival of these parks, again at the municipal, state, and national level, unless there is a corresponding understanding and appreciation by the American people. The bottom line is that the future or the survival of these parks is in direct proportion to how they are accepted and appreciated by the public. That's a given. That's a given. Let me add one other point of passion, I suppose. That is our recurring and consistent commitment to our youth. Secretary Salazar has established as one of his overarching goals is that every bureau, every office within the interior will reach out to our young people and involve them in the breadth of the programs of that department. Because in essence, those young people who will ultimately become the President of the United States, the Governor of Massachusetts,